Good day, and welcome to the Bionano Genomics First Quarter 2021 Earnings Conference Call. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Amy Conrad from Investor Relations. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Latif, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Bionano Genomics First Quarter 2021 Financial Results Conference Call. Leading the call today is Dr. Erik Holmlin, CEO of Bionano. He is joined by Chris Stewart, CFO of Bionano, and Dr. Alka Chaubey, CMO of Bionano. After market close today, Bionano issued a press release announcing its financial results for the first quarter of 2021. A copy of the release can be found on the Investor Relations page of the company's website. Before I jump into the forward-looking statements, we want to remind you that our annual meeting is coming up on June 10th, and if you haven't already done so, please vote your shares as soon as you can. I would like to remind everyone that certain statements made during this conference call may be forward-looking, including statements about our strategic and commercialization plans, sales pipeline, anticipated benefits or improvements to the Saphyr system, and the advantages of the Saphyr system over current technologies, our expectations regarding timing and content of study results, and anticipated benefits of these studies in driving adoption of the Saphyr system. Such forward-looking statements are based upon current expectations, and there can be no assurances that the results contemplated in these statements will be realized. Actual results may differ materially from such statements due to a number of factors and risks, some of which are identified in our press release and our reports filed with the SEC. These forward-looking statements are based on information available to Bionano today, and the company assumes no obligation to update statements as circumstances change. An audio recording and webcast replay for today's conference call will also be available online in the Investors section of the company's website. With that, I will turn the call over to Erik.
Thank you, Amy, and good afternoon, everyone. Let me begin by saying that 2021 is off to a solid start for Bionano, and we're thrilled with our progress during this first quarter. We ended 2020 with a strong fourth quarter, and that momentum has really continued into this first quarter of 2021, where we had record numbers of flow cells sold, services samples analyzed, and Saphyr systems installed. There are now more Saphyr systems in service than ever before. And that's really important because it means our customers are able to analyze more and more genomes. And with the improvements in throughput and cost of operation that we've introduced, they're running larger and larger studies, which in turn means there'll be more data in the field. And those data really tell the story of the value of optical genome mapping. And what we're seeing is that the quality and number of presentations and publications featuring this optical genome mapping data is continuing to increase. And I can't really think of a better illustration of that progress than our next generation cytogenomics symposium that some of you may have followed. It was originated and organized by Dr. Alka Chaubey, our CMO, and it featured 32 customers presenting breakthroughs that were enabled by optical genome mapping across basic research, clinical research, including applications in COVID, during a total of 33 presentations over the course of 5 days in January of this year. And that message of scientific success has resonated beyond our expectations and really elevated the profile of the company throughout the market. And we expect this momentum to continue, and we believe that it will be connected to our ongoing commercial success over the course of this year, but into the future. Looking at the numbers for the first quarter, our commercial indicators grew year over year. Since the start of 2020, our focus has been on pursuing a go-to-market model that is intended to remove barriers that have historically made it difficult for customers to get Bionano data. We now offer them sample analysis services, a reagent rental option where they can commit to a certain volume of consumables, and we will provide them with a Saphyr system that they rent. And we have attractive options for capital acquisition, allowing customers to buy a Saphyr system. And we believe that this commercial strategy is working and that its success is reflected in our performance during this first quarter. We shipped 11 Saphyr systems into the market, and when you compare that to the 5 systems that we shipped in the same quarter in 2020, you can see that the business is definitely improving. We completed a number of installations over the course of the quarter, bringing the total number of Saphyr systems installed in the field to 107. We sold 2,603 nanochannel array flow cells. Now remember, a flow cell is the measure of the number of human genome analysis capacity that's acquired in consumables on a quarterly basis. And this is the highest number that we've sold in a quarter ever. It represents 275% growth over the number of flow cells that we sold in the first quarter of 2020. And we also grew by 5% the number sold over the fourth quarter of 2020. So more flow cells that are purchased correlates with more samples analyzed, more Bionano data in the field, which helps to propel us forward. This is an incredible result. We also analyzed 227 samples in our Saphyr Services Lab, which is a record number for us in any first quarter ever. We believe the availability of commercial services is an effective way to put Bionano data in the hands of customers so that they can evaluate optical genome mapping, and that this approach will result in more publications, which are critical to driving the Bionano story forward and more Saphyr adoption. We also expanded into new geographic markets, including South Africa, Greece, Russia, South Korea, and important clinical research sites in the United Kingdom and Germany. I want to highlight that King's College Hospital in London, which is part of the National Health System Regional Genetics Laboratory in Belfast City Hospital, have recently adopted Saphyr systems. Now, the NHS is the National Health Service in the United Kingdom, and adoption of Saphyr by these two important sites sets us up for growth in the UK as researchers seek to develop alternatives to their traditional cytogenetic methods there. We also expanded our installed base in Canada, where Saphyr was adopted by the University Health Network in Toronto. This network has the largest hospital lab in all of Canada, and they're going to use the Saphyr system to research better methods for genome analysis across a variety of indications. Finally, we saw a good volume of samples coming into our Lineagen business for analysis on that suite of laboratory-developed tests which focus on pediatric neurodevelopmental disorders. And revenues for these diagnostic services contribute to the revenues that are listed on the services line on our P&L. Now, regarding product development, we continue to make Saphyr faster, easier, and more cost-effective to operate. This quarter, we increased the speed of our cloud computing solution by 30% and reduced the cost of it to the end user by 50%. New applications for optical genome mapping that we released this quarter include prenatal genome analysis on amniocytes, as well as solutions for genome analysis in connection with infertility research. Dr. Jim Broach at Penn State University, who is somebody we've worked with for a number of years, published a method for solid tumor analysis by optical genome mapping, and Dr. Yuval Ebenstein at Tel Aviv University published a method to analyze DNA methylation in cancer genomes. It's these types of publications and advances in methods that will allow us to expand into additional substantial markets. We also had an important patent issued that showed how different probes can be used to detect even more variants and possibly even single nucleotide variants. Now I want to talk a little bit about what we see as the critical milestones to achieving adoption of optical genome mapping as an alternative to existing cytogenetic methods. And these milestones include publication of large studies comparing optical genome mapping to the traditional methods that are used today, highlighting concordance with those methods, and highlighting incremental improvement in finding the relevant variants that help better understand genetic conditions. Another milestone includes the development of assays on Saphyr by these labs that are adopting the system, and then finally acceptance of OGM assays by third-party payers. With regard to progress on the concordance data, MD Anderson Cancer Center published a study showing how Saphyr significantly reduced the time to results for solid tumor analysis, for tumor analysis of subjects with myelodysplastic syndrome from several weeks to just 4 days, while being 100% concordant with the traditional methods and finding biologically relevant variants that the traditional methods did not find. This was a very significant enhancement. The Next Generation Cytogenomics Symposium featured a presentation from multiple speakers, each showing similar performance of Saphyr for genetic disease, a variety of blood and solid cancer types. One highlight was a presentation by Dr. Gordana Rocca from Children's Hospital in Los Angeles, who showed that Saphyr detects known druggable gene fusions in pediatric acute leukemias that panels typically used on next-generation sequencing or cytogenetics methods for these subjects missed. Also in the first quarter, we had an increased scientific presence at major conferences at the 2021 annual clinical genetics meeting of ACMG, one of the most important medical genetics meetings in the world. Bionano customers presented a record number of studies across each of our target growth markets. This base of public optical genome mapping data resonates with our potential customers and noticeably drives commercial interest and future adoption in the platform. And that's why we made a point of announcing how significant our presence at ACMG was this year. Development and validation of assays by end users who adopt the research use only platform is also important. And we see progress in this area in the US and Europe as well. In the US, Augusta University has developed an assay for whole genome analysis with optical genome mapping for constitutional genetic disorders, and they are developing assays for prenatal analysis and solid tumor analysis as well. In Europe, we expect the accreditation of optical genome mapping-based assays for acute leukemias and FSHD in certain European markets in this second quarter. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about this challenge around third-party reimbursement, which is most acute in the US. Here we acquired Lineagen to help us overcome this barrier. With their CLIA license and vast clinical expertise, combined with the leadership of Alka Chaubey, we believe we can develop optical genome mapping assays on Saphyr, validate LDTs that may improve upon the standard of care. We are leveraging the Lineagen existing portfolio of third-party payer contracts and certified coders to work out this path for reimbursement. Alka has built an incredible effort to generate the most comprehensive data set needed for optical genome mapping to speed up this process of acceptance by the reimbursement community. Alka is here today, and I'd like to ask her to tell you about this program. So with that, I will turn it over to Alka.
Thank you, Erik. I am extremely happy to have this chance to connect with all of you today and tell you about our efforts to make optical genome mapping with Saphyr an essential method for genome analysis. So in addition to supporting the key success factors Erik mentioned for market acceptance, we have created one of the most ambitious programs in clinical research to compare optical genome mapping side by side against traditional methods that are actually recommended in medical guidelines. Our studies will span our 4 major growth markets, which include prenatal and postnatal genetic analysis, hematological malignancies, and solid tumor analysis. For each of these indications, there will be at least 3 sites that will develop assays and evaluate a total of 1,000 patients. We expect that over the course of these studies, each site will validate their assays themselves and also use the data they produce to support the further adoption of optical genome mapping at their institutions. Operationally, institutional review board approval has been obtained for all of the sites in our postnatal genome analysis study, and site recruitment and training is complete. Sample enrollment is ongoing, and 3 sites have begun to generate the data. For the prenatal and heme studies, site recruitment and IRB approvals have begun, and we expect sites to be generating data in Q3 for our prenatal studies and Q4 for our heme studies. The reason we are investing so heavily in these studies to generate the data set is that we believe it can be the basis to make recommendations and changes in the guidelines established by medical societies that actually recommend the usage of technologies for genome analysis for various genetic diseases or indications. Although a program of this scale is often later in the development process, but because of the capital we have available, we can pursue it now and accelerate the path to medical society consideration of optical genome mapping. Back to Erik.
Thank you, Alka. Much of the progress we are making is possible because of the outstanding team we are building and the strength of our balance sheet, which together enable us to invest in and advance all areas of the business without the capital constraints we once faced. With our elevated profile of bringing the next disruptive technology to healthcare, we will have the opportunity to continue adding transformational talent to the team to further accelerate our progress, and I'm inviting you to stay tuned for more progress in this area of human capital. And so I will now turn over the call to another outstanding leader at Bionano, Chris Stewart, for an overview of our financials. Chris?
Thanks, Erik, and hello, everybody. Revenue in Q1 was approximately $3.2 million, up 179% from the $1.1 million we reported in the same period of 2020. Year on year, revenue was up in all geographies and across both product and service revenue. The increase in global product sales was driven by increased demand for our reagent rental program and consumables, while the increase in service revenue was primarily driven by sales from our Lineagen subsidiary. Our gross margins came in at 33%, up 8% from the same period last year, due mainly to this a shift in our product mix towards higher margin consumables and services. First quarter operating expenses was $12.2 million, an increase of $2.2 million over the same period in 2020. This increase was primarily due to increased headcount related and material and supply expense. Finally, as of March 31st, 2021, our cash balance was $362 million, derived from the raise of $337 million in 2 underwritten public offerings, sales on our ATM facility, and the exercise of outstanding warrants for common stock driven by the increase in our share price. As has been discussed, our objectives for 2021 center on clearing additional barriers to widespread adoption through the execution of our clinical studies, continuing to expand on the number of published studies showcasing the power of Saphyr, and making progress on our next generation high-throughput Saphyr instrument. We will also continue to build both our sales and marketing and our R&D teams prudently through the year. This is a very exciting time for Bionano. We are well capitalized and sharply focused on execution. We look forward on updating you on our progress through the year. And again, as Amy mentioned up front, we want to remind you again that our annual meeting is coming up on June 10th, and we ask you to please vote your shares as soon as possible. With that, I will turn the call back to Erik to discuss upcoming milestones for the year. Then we'll open it up for Q&A. Erik?
Thanks, Chris. Outstanding update. In summary, the first quarter of 2021 continued the momentum we saw in the second half of 2020. We're progressing nicely against our main goals of working toward global adoption of Saphyr through increased sales, increased publication of Saphyr data, initiation of more clinical studies, and broadening the scope of the technology. Here you can see more anticipated milestones for the remainder of 2021. In the next year and several years, we believe that optical genome mapping has the potential to become the standard of care. Right now, Saphyr is a research use only tool, and we're doing the right studies to demonstrate its utility. With all our programs, we're hopeful that optical genome mapping could be considered a standard technology in prenatal and postnatal analysis, heme malignancies, as well as solid tumors. We're making great progress along these goals and are hoping to grow the installed base to a level of about 150 Saphyr systems, which represents this by the end of this year, which represents a key milestone around adoption. And with that, we are ready to take questions. So, operator.